Hey there my friends, Kevin Steinman here coming at you with CryptoDaily News. This is actually a special live stream where I'm going to be featuring one of the co-founders of the company QuantmRE. And if you're not too familiar with them, you will be in just a second, but I'll go ahead and give you some insight as to who they are. Matthew is here already, so I can actually go ahead, once he requests to join the stream, we can start this interview and just jump right into it. So it looks like we're waiting for the connection here, but we should be good to go in just a second. I'm actually really excited about this. Hey Matthew, great to have you on here. Maybe you could start with just your background and how you decided to start QuantmRE and really where the vision came from, because I know a lot of times in the crypto space and with other companies, people don't see all the work that goes into it beforehand, or like where the inception for the idea came from. They just see the results of like where the company is going after a certain point in time, but they don't necessarily see like if the iceberg is this much out of water, they don't see what is underneath that made it get to that point. Do you know what I mean?
It's a bit like a swan. Mm-hmm. So when you see a swan on the lake, it's serene and calm. But what most people don't see is underneath you've got this sort of crazy thrashing to try and propel this thing along. Mm-hmm. So we started really looking at QuantmRE about a year ago. Mm-hmm. In fact, a little bit more than that, because one of the biggest issues that we came across in understanding cryptocurrencies was, I mean, the big question is what are they based on? Mm-hmm. What are cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin in particular? Mm-hmm. Where is their intrinsic value? And that's a question that it was very difficult for people to answer, because the answer would be something like it's based on network effect, or it's based on adoption, or it's based on number of transactions. But to me, that wasn't really something that I could put my arms around. Mm-hmm. My background is in technology and finance. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. When I came to the US just over 4.5 years ago, one of the first things I did was to set up a real estate crowdfunding company that really leveraged the changes in the Jobs Act, which was which is where the securities laws from the 1930s received a pretty serious upgrade, mm-hmm. Enabling investments to be sort of democratized. So I had that experience of securities and real estate, mm-hmm. and taking real estate assets and putting them in a crowdfunding environment. So over a period where we were sort of scratching our heads madly trying to figure out how we could take a currency or a cryptocurrency and make it asset-backed, it seemed entirely logical to put it and to link it somehow with real estate. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the idea really came from. It was a combination of my understanding of securities laws and really just trying to figure out how we can put something together that would have some intrinsic value. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I really like what you said about Bitcoin, because, this is absolutely true. It's almost like people think that the value is derivative from blockchain technology, even though blockchain itself is more disruptive and I think to me more appealing than any of the cryptocurrencies itself. But Bitcoin was the one that put every other crypto on the map, because that was the one that, became the most popular. And it's certainly the one that, to me, it's almost like the US dollar. If you look at the markets like Forex, and maybe Ethereum is like the pound after Brexit right now. But, yeah. So, I know IBM is also doing some things with stable coins utilizing the Stellar platform. So to me, when I hear stable coins, I don't think a lot of people really understand exactly what you went over in terms of cryptos that are actually backed by real world assets. But to me, as I learn more and more, and even with the understanding that I have, I think it's just like a no-brainer, because it's just like Gemini's token that just got launched yesterday and approved by the SEC in a green light in the state of New York too. That's actually, they're backing it 1-to-1 with a dollar. And, that was after like the US dollar tether had some issues and people were questioning the legitimacy of whether or not they were going and like falsifying the records and things like that. But I think, in the future, any company that is intending to do an ICO and have some type of crypto play, they're probably going to want to do a stable coin just because of the fact that it makes sense. And as we go through this transitionary period, people are going to ask that same question that you asked originally of like, what is this really backed by? Like, what is the real value? And it's easy, I think, for anyone to understand that real estate being one of the oldest assets known to man, I think is a perfect marriage with, cryptocurrency, blockchain, and real estate, bringing it all together. Do you see that the future real estate will be very different than it is today, especially with, QuantmRE doing what it is? I mean, when I was reading the white paper and going through some of the documentation, I thought it was really interesting. Just, three things that stood out to me immediately was the fact that, for homeowners, it was able to go and make it so people who maybe they traditionally had to go and take out a HELOC, like a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit, they wouldn't have to do that anymore if they wanted to free up the equity in their homes to be able to get some cash temporarily or for what have you. But then also for people like myself who, I'm a millennial and I know that there's lots more people like me. And for me, when I look at real estate, I don't necessarily think about it as if it's going to be my first investment choice, because I live in the age of technology and I grew up with technology and, blockchain at that, like I'm growing up with it as it's becoming more and more disruptive and more adopted. But the thing is, I just think like how this type of thing hasn't been created sooner, because the value that it provides to people who are actually real estate investors, like, traditionally real estate investment groups, it may be a group of like 3 or 4 people, they pool their money together, now they go buy a property or 2 or 3. But to me, I almost think about like, first of all, what is your thoughts on the future real estate, both with QuantmRE in mind and not? And then also, what are your thoughts on, real estate investing in the future with or without QuantmRE? Because again, hey guys, welcome. Again, I was just thinking about how difficult it would be if we continue moving this direction with having to pull in real estate investment groups the way it's currently done. I mean, it just seems like an inefficient way to do it with the technology that's available today.
And I think that's precisely the answer. It's an inefficient way of doing things with the technology that's now available. And I think that real estate is one of the last industries that is being dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century. If you think about what's involved in a real estate transaction, pretty much anywhere in the world. In the US, we have escrow agents, title companies, we have the buyer, we have the seller, we have the attorneys, we have the realtors, we have the insurance companies, and we have the appraisal companies. There are so many individual entities that all have to come together in perfect harmony to allow a house purchase and sale to happen. And that means that if you've got all these independent entities, there's an enormous amount of cost and inefficiency, and there's also a certain amount of risk involved. You have to trust your attorney, you have to trust the title company, you have to trust the escrow company. And as you send as the bank sends their $1 million to these various entities, there are so many opportunities for that process to break down. And what blockchain technologies enables us to do is really remove a lot of the risk and remove a lot of the inefficiencies. So your question was, where do we think real estate is going to be? And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, more and more of the real estate transaction process will move onto the blockchain. And what that will do, that will make the process of moving ownership from one person to another programmatic as opposed to being analog. Now, if something like this can be trusted and it's programmatic, that means we can then look at the importance of platforms like QuantmRE, because as a home buyer, home seller, or an investor, you'll be able to go onto the platform, look at real estate properties, and rather than having to buy all of that property, you'll be able to buy a percentage or a fraction, because it will be just as easy to sell a fraction of the property as it would be to sell the whole lot. And so I think we're going to see some seismic changes, which are very, very positive changes in real estate globally. And we think we are at the sort of spearhead or the tip of the arrow in terms of where those developments are coming from.
That's awesome. I mean, hey there, Crypto Edutainment and Scarlett. We're actually just doing an interview here with Matthew Sullivan, the CEO of Quantum, and we're predicting what the future real estate will look like with and without a technology and platform like QuantmRE. So Matthew was just saying that, currently, and I agree with this, the system is very inefficient, very outdated. What I'm actually really excited about, that you reminded me something just with what you said there, is, in the crash of 2008, there was all these different types of securities and financial instruments created around the actual equity in homes. So I'm curious, now with the blockchain coming into play, it almost seems like that type of catastrophe wouldn't be possible. But what is important, moreover, is like how other types of, let's say, instruments could be created within the platform to where people could, instead of just getting tokens, they may be interested in like taking the tokens and doing something else with them. But it just makes it very simple for them to go and, participate in being able to own a home, even if they can only afford $10,000 worth of, let's say, an apartment in New York that's, in the middle of Times Square or whatever. I was actually, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and really, I think what happened back in in 07 and 08, it was actually to do with debt. And what we're working with is something that is anti-debt. It's the kryptonite version of debt. In other words, we're working with the equity in people's homes, and that's the stuff that has no debt. But the real problem that people have is if they want to access the debt in their homes, they have to go back to the bank, borrow more money, increase their debt, secured against that equity. What we do is we release them from that debt cycle by saying, we will buy a piece of the value of your home that you own outright. We'll buy that now, so you don't have to wait until you sell your home to be able to get the value of your equity. Now that's very different to what happened in 2007 in the global financial crisis. That was really triggered by too much debt and too many instruments that were debt-based instruments. So there were synthetic instruments that leveraged debt, that was leveraged and leveraged and leveraged all many times. So we're dealing with a completely separate instrument. But I think one of the biggest issues of the crisis was lack of knowledge and lack of information about what the underlying securities were in the packaged debt instruments. Now, what the blockchain would do was make it much more transparent to be able to see what is actually, what is the asset or what has been collateralized in this particular asset class. So, first of all, I think that we want to make clear that by buying part of the equity in people's homes, we're not increasing their debt, we're freeing them from additional debt, which is, I think, the cure for what would happen, which would absolutely prevent another 2007. Most importantly, we're enabling people to buy into, as you rightly say, fractions of people's homes without them having to buy the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's actually one thing, for myself that is very attractive because, nowadays, like I said earlier, there's a lot of different ways to go and make money through different types of investments. And certainly real estate has always been considered one of the safer ways to do it. But of course, the barrier to entry is something that many people, they don't have, let's say, $200, $500, $1 million lying around to go and buy a house to then only get an X amount return that's a fraction, to then wait, let's say 20 or 30 years to pay off what they bought the house with. Then, you know what I mean? So basically, I think it's a great platform for that.
It is, and that's where, see, because what you're doing is you're saying, if I look at this with a fresh pair of eyes, it's crazy. I have to buy something, I have to leverage myself up to up to my eyebrows to buy this asset, and then if I want to sell it, I have to jump through all these hoops. It's illiquid. It costs me a fortune every month. And that's supposed to be an asset, and obviously you then have the risk of what happens if the value goes down. So there are so many things that can be improved with this whole process. And what you're doing is exactly the most sensible thing. If we look at it, with a completely fresh set of eyes, it's crazy. This is how we need to improve it. And the blockchain is the technology and cryptocurrencies that act as a currency or a liquidity mechanism on that pool of assets. That now is the time that we can actually move real estate out of the dark ages into the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that, to me, just those two things are what I am most excited about, to see what happens the next 3 to 6 months here. But just for people that maybe they're watching this as a replay and they don't quite understand the main opportunity of, let's say, why this is the perfect time. I mean, personally, I think we almost have a perfect storm. So it's, it's really interesting to see, especially, we're in a bearish crypto market. The forecast for real estate, there hasn't been a crash in a while. And certainly the debt is going up with everyone in America. But I'm curious, like, from your point of view, let's just say, not in reference to why it's the perfect time for QuantmRE, but why would you say it's the perfect time for this type of disruption? Because, there's some reasons that I mentioned, but I'm very curious to know your thoughts on that as well, of like just why the positioning and the perfect storm is here to make this possible. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest shifts in our lifetime, because the real estate market is like a $31.8 trillion market. So that's
globally, it's a $211 trillion market.
Oh, wow.
And that figure you put, 31.8 trillion, that's just the US residential strip. So forget about, the Empire State Building and commercial buildings and strip malls and shopping malls and just residential's almost 32 trillion. But the great thing about disruptive technologies is they don't normally give you any advance warning when they turn up. Mm-hmm. So you don't get in a couple of years' time you're going to get the blockchain. So be prepared, everybody. It just happens, and it just happens at a time when you're right. I think the world, or the US in particular, is creaking under the weight of debt. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, if you look at the value of real estate, it has grown significantly in many areas in the US because real estate is a very local business. It's not, you don't have one size fits all. It's very localized across the US and the rest of the world. But there's a lot of money that people have made in real estate, but they can't tap into it because they cannot afford to take on more debt. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're seeing the number of home equity lines of credits diminish, and that will continue to reduce as interest rates increase. So there's this economic climate that we're in, mm-hmm. which makes it very expensive for people to borrow money. But at the same time, you have this sort of deflationary squeeze where if people believe that we're entering a recession or about to enter a recession, they don't spend money. So if people stop spending money, then that means that it pulls liquidity out of the economy. And if there's no liquidity, that's when we start moving into recession. So that there are indicators in many different areas that we're at a point where something needs to change. Now, what blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies do is they reduce the cost of transactions and they enable money to flow where previously it couldn't flow because of the cost associated with those transactions. So let's say if the cost of selling your home is a tenth of what it is today, more and more people will be able to buy and sell homes. If we then have platforms that allow those interests to trade freely, then what happens is money moves out of these locked up assets back into the economy so people can spend it on whatever they want. And that includes education, it includes fast cars and holidays as well as home improvement. So, but what we're doing is we're taking, and the perfect storm really is saying, we're sick of debt. Here's a way to tap into your money, leveraging these technologies, making that process more efficient. And the benefit is you get more disposable income if you're a homeowner, which you can put back into the economy. So we don't need any more quantitative easing.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, I think everything you said there, it definitely attributes to the positioning and the timing being very much, right time, right place. Just for people to understand the process, maybe there's some people who watch this who they haven't gotten a mortgage yet, or they haven't experienced being a homeowner for very long to actually find the need to take out a second mortgage, or HELOC, which is home equity line of credit, same thing. Let's just say, for instance, if I had a home and it was worth $750,000 and I had already paid off, I don't know, 500,000 of it, and I wanted to sell that equity of 500,000, onto Quantum's platform. So is there any way, for instance, or is it contingent, like could I go and buy back that equity anytime, or could someone who sold it, they just have to find, like, I'm kind of curious about, once they actually convert their equity into a token, is that token specific to their actual home, or is that token just a token on the platform that is saying you have this token that you can actually use to either buy the equity back in your own home or in other homes if you want to?
Yeah, actually it's much easier than that. If you're the homeowner, we write you a check. We pay you in old-fashioned dollars.
Okay.
So what happens is, if you're a homeowner, we buy that asset from you, we pay you in dollars, so there's no confusion with cryptocurrency. But what we've got is an asset, because we have the rights to some appreciation in your home, and that's an asset. So we put that into our pool, and then we tokenize that pool, and so that token is over here somewhere, and that token is bought by people that want to invest in real estate, or maybe want to use that token as a way of preserving value and not be subject to the same volatility as Bitcoin. But from a homeowner perspective, you don't have to know anything about cryptocurrency. You just need to have a home, some equity, and a bank account, and the ability to fill out a form.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. So that's actually even better for homeowners, I think, because like you just said, they don't even have to deal with any crypto at all. But I think it definitely touches on both sides of the market very well in a very eloquent way. So I'm really glad we had a chance to talk here. I understand that the ICO for this month for US residents only, is it going to finish at the end of this month for residents only, and next month would people?
Yeah, there's no ICO. So for US residents, we are the way that we're launching this token, it's a security token. So we are filing the necessary paperwork with the SEC next week, and it's going to take a few months for that process. So the asset-backed token won't be available probably until the early part of next year, maybe second half of next year. So, and that's because it takes time to get all of this through the sort of the SEC process. But in the meantime, there will be some announcements regarding an ICO to non-US investors, and that'll be through a separate separate entity. But that's something that we'll be announcing quite soon. So, but that's I need to stress that that is not available to US investors. The security token, which is the asset-backed token, will be available to anybody, and that's something that we're hoping to bring out early next year. Okay,
awesome. So I think if people want to find out more, they'll just head on over to QuantmRE.com. That's the best place to get all the information. Awesome. So anyone who's watching this, if you enjoyed what we've talked about today and you would like to learn more, all you have to do is go on over to that website that I just put in the comments, and you can learn more about what Quantum is doing, what Matthew has done, what this amazing platform is set to do in the industry. And I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk here today, Matthew. So thanks for your time, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Great to be on the show. Thank you very much.
Take it easy.
Without even trying, how do they do it? This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure,